Alright, so taking a break from Steven Universe for a week while I get my thoughts together regarding the next major theory video that I want to make, let's talk a little more about Star versus the Forces of Evil. This is tentatively that third video that I kept talking about wanting to make, though I did rework it quite a bit from what I had originally planned. In fact, I wanted to start out the video by saying if you're one of the few people who asked me questions about Star versus, and I said that the answer to your questions might end up in this video, and the answer to your question didn't end up in this video, please ask me again. I don't remember who all you were. And honestly, I'd like to get enough Star versus specific questions to do an entire Star versus Q&A video at some time in the next couple of weeks. That said, with Star versus coming back relatively soon, I'm getting more and more hyped for the show, for being able to cover the show live rather than in retrospect as I have up to this point. All indications suggest that this is going to be the final season and that it's going to be over relatively quickly, which is kind of a shame, and I certainly hope that our deductions about that are wrong. In short, it looks like Disney's going to try to push every single episode before even the fall rolls around, which I think is just a huge mistake. It's basically going to be a giant Star bomb. And you guys know how I feel about that when it comes to Steven Universe. I feel exactly the same when it comes to shows like Star as well. The series should be given time to breathe and pace itself as it was intended to be paced. Still, with the season coming so soon, I do want to get my predictions for where the story is going out there into the world. So that's basically what this video is going to be. I'm going to talk about where I feel the story up to this point is going to go next season and how things are going to resolve. I think the main things on everyone's mind after the previous season finale are the fact that Star doesn't have the wand anymore, Eclipsa still has that, and the fact that the monsters are seemingly about to receive a new leader in the form of Eclipsa's monster husband, Globgor. We know a little bit about Globgor aside from just his design, which is very Trigon-like. If you guys have seen Teen Titans or read DC Comics, you'll know who I'm talking about. And while a design like that does in and of itself suggest that he is very dangerous, at least as dangerous as any major villain we have gotten up to this point, that's still not a lot. So I went to the Magic Book of Spells and did a little bit of reading there. Holy crap, is that a dense book, though. I'm still only halfway through it, like normally. Still, there's some pretty interesting information in there. It looks like Eclipsa and Globgor met during a major war between humans and monsters, that they fell in love, and that Globgor convinced Eclipsa that if she left Muni behind, she would be safe among the monsters, and she was. However, in order to do this, Eclipsa had to abandon her husband, Shastakan, who came from the Spider-Bite Kingdom, and effectively made herself a traitor to the throne, not just because she ran out on her duties, but because she ran out on her duties to be with a monster during a time of war. Keep in mind that the monsters who Globgor was technically allied with assassinated Eclipsa's mother during the events of all of this. Like, honestly, it seems like the humans are at least as to blame for the war between Muni and the monster kingdoms than the monsters themselves were. But still, I can kind of half understand why Eclipsa would have been considered evil after doing this. It was after Globgor and Eclipsa and the rest of the monster army left to find refuge at the ancient monster temple that Globgor and Eclipsa had Meteora, the true heir to the throne. Theoretically, at least. We don't know yet if a half-monster child can inherit the throne. I would assume that she could, though, especially now considering that sentiments regarding monsters have softened quite a bit thanks to Star, which presents the first interesting major conflict that I think we're going to see next season. It's pretty clear at this point that Eclipsa doesn't really care whether or not she has the throne. And I honestly don't think that she wants it. I think she'd be content to be Globgor's wife. Like, I don't think she'd build her entire identity around that, but I think she'd be content to be that among everything else that she is and not be a queen. We also know that Globgor was referred to, by Eclipsa at least, as the Prince of Darkness, suggesting that he himself may be the heir to his own kingdom. He may ascend to become a literal king of monsters. So she'd be a queen anyway. She'd just be a queen of a kingdom that feels more at home to her than her own. So I don't think there's really going to be a conflict between Eclipsa and Star for the throne of Muni. I don't think Eclipsa is going to show up and demand her birthright, for example. But I do think the fact that Star knows now that her family was not actually meant to inherit the throne is going to affect her. We already know that she gave up the wand to Eclipsa because she felt that Eclipsa deserved it more because of her lineage. And despite the fact that Star did everything that she could in the end to protect her kingdom, even if she did start out the conflict with Meteora, avoiding her responsibilities rather than facing them, she still did everything that she could in the end. I get the sense that come next season, she's going to have a real crisis of identity. Someone is going to have to step up and take responsibility for rebuilding the kingdom after what Meteora did. And I don't think Star is going to want to do that, but not because she's shirking her responsibilities like the child that she was when the series started, but because she doesn't feel like she deserves the responsibility now that she's not actually the heir. I think this is all going to play into a much larger coming-of-age story, which we're going to get throughout the entire season, about Star coming to understand that she has earned her position as leader of these people, that it doesn't matter which bloodline she comes from, she does care about these people and has the capacity to govern and protect them. I think she's also going to realize that the only way to end the coming conflict between humans and monsters is if she steps up and assumes a leadership role and continues her work seeking peace between the two peoples. And I think that's what the second major conflict of this season is going to be. We do also know about Globgor that he and Eclipsa petitioned together for the humans and monsters to find peace. That means that back in their day, they were very much like Star is now. But after everything that happened, his daughter being taken away and being trapped in Crystal, I think Globgor is going to be kind of pissed off. I think he's going to restart the conflict between humans and monsters out of sheer rage. But I think that the rapport that Star and Eclipsa have built between one another is going to have an effect on him. I think the two of them are going to continue pushing for peace between humans and monsters, and while I do think that things are going to get worse before they get better, I do think that the series is going to resolve without such a major conflict as the kind that we've gotten in the last couple of season finales. I do think that in the end, Star is going to be able to petition for peace, and that Globgor is going to listen to her. And I don't think it's going to be just because of Eclipse. I think there are going to be other people allied with him who feel the same way. If he really does assume some sort of role of king of the monsters, I imagine he's going to absorb into his forces a whole bunch of monster characters that we already know. Buff Frog, for example, may end up being one of the forces in Globgor's army, or at the very least he may defect from Globgor's army, making a point to Globgor through his defection. I also think it's entirely possible that a lot of the kingdoms that are allied to Muni right now may side with the monsters. Tom's kingdom, for example, is full of people who are pretty monster adjacent anyway. I mean, heck, even the ponies are more monster-like than they are people-like, if that makes any sense. With Muni essentially in ruins, its power structure equally in ruins, with Star doubting herself, it's possible that people may choose to side with Globgor in the coming conflict simply because he's a safer choice. This season may actually end off with Muni standing alone against all of the other kingdoms, and Star having to convince Globgor to give peace a chance, even despite the fact that there's such a power disparity between the two sides. Frankly, I think this is the most exciting outcome we could expect, and I hope it goes that way, though not to the point that Star stops trusting some of her friends. Though, to be frank, if Tom's kingdom, for example, and if Ponyhead's kingdom, for example, side with Globgor, I don't think that Tom and Pony will as well. There are other things, other smaller, more minor things that I expect to get resolutions in this season as well. Star is going to have to relearn how to do magic, or create another wand for herself at the very least. Star without magic just doesn't work in this show. I know there's some people who want to see her go the whole season without access to magic, but I don't. Star is, of course, going to have to find her mom. That's a whole thing that I don't even know where that's going, except that I do think we're going to learn more and more about magic as that storyline progresses. I think the fact that she is seemingly trapped somewhere in the realm of magic, or in realms connected to it, is going to be used to teach Star more and more about magic as that storyline progresses. And maybe that's even how she'll learn how to cast magic without a wand. But still, that's definitely got to happen. And it's something that Star is definitely going to be focusing on, so I do think it is going to happen. There's going to have to be some resolution to the seeming love triangle between Star, Tom, and Marco, and honestly, I do think it's going to end up with Star and Marco being together, though I wouldn't be opposed to all three of them forming a sort of, what would you even call that, a tri-couple? I don't even know. But let's be clear, this is Disney, that's not going to happen. So I do think Star and Marco ending up together is the way that things are going to go, and I'm not opposed to that idea, even in the slightest. I think they're very cute as a couple. But with everything going on in Star's life right now, that's definitely not something that's going to be in the forefront of their minds. I expect it to happen naturally over the entire course of the season. There's also the issue of Marco's monster arm, which I think is going to come up again. It is still definitely a part of him, as well as Marco's knighthood, which is something that I think is going to be addressed this season, and the fact that it's possible that Marco has some magical potential within him, and maybe even has some human heritage. I know it's just a fan theory, but I think it's definitely possible, and if it is, it'll be addressed this season as well. But perhaps most interestingly at all, I do think there's going to be some further resolution to Ludo's plotline. In fact, I think he's going to get an entire character arc this season that is parallel to, but separate from, Star's, a sort of coming of age of his own. And I say parallel because I think that Ludo is going to learn about magic this season as well. We already know that he has something of a talent for it. Not in the same way that Star does, but he has a talent for learning magic technically, the way that you're supposed to learn it. And I do think that by the end of the series, Ludo is either going to have access to magic, or he's going to be well on his way to learning how to gain access to magic for himself. And I can't imagine a way that this would be tied into Star's journey, unless Ludo somehow becomes involved in Star's quest to find and bring home her mother. It is certainly possible that if Ludo somehow becomes embroiled in that same storyline, he will be able to learn more about magic as Star herself does. This could be super interesting because based on his last appearance, we know that Ludo still has issues that he has to work through regarding his past interactions with Star and Marco. I don't think at this point he still considers them his enemies, but he still blames them for a lot of the bad stuff that happened in his life. It's possible that working with Star, or working parallel to Star to learn about magic in his own way, will help him to work through those issues, and by the end of the season I do think he will be, if not a friend to Star, then an ally. I also think that once Star works out her own way to do magic, I do think that Ludo is going to end up with the magic book, or its equivalent. After all, he was learning magic from Glossaryck, which is something that Star herself is not very receptive to. And Ludo also seems to see Glossaryck as something of a father figure, which I think is important to him as a character. Of course, I think that all of these things are going to culminate in an epic finale, though I think it's going to be epic in ways that the past couple of finales weren't. Despite how good the Season 2 and the Season 3 finales were, they were pretty structurally similar, and I'd like to see something different the third time around. But I do think that all these things, the resolutions, all these things are going to culminate in the final finale of the series. I do think that these plot lines have been set up well enough that we only need one more season to resolve them. They can certainly get more than one season out of them, but I don't think we need more than one season to resolve them. The stage has been set, and I think it's going to be fantastic. I think by the end of the series, Star is going to be a queen who earned her throne. That Marco is going to be her knight. I do think he's going to be knighted over the course of the season. He's definitely earned it by now. That there will be at least a tentative and building piece between Uni and monsters as a whole, and that Globgor is going to be her friend and ally, rather than her enemy. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what do you think of any of the ideas that I put forth in this analysis video? Most specifically, where do you guys think that the series is going to end up? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? I really want to hear your viewpoints on this subject matter. So as usual, let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.